Previously on Dividend Gardening. Canadian Pacific offers to buy Kansas City Southern. They get a bunch of letters of support. The STB even approves their voting trust. It's all looking good until Canadian National puts in a higher bid, and KCS accepts it. CP is not happy. Some time passes. CP ups its bid, but it's still slightly less, and the KCS board says it's not superior to CN's, but they haven't heard from the STB yet. The STB says decision from me by the end of August, so they rescheduled their shareholders meeting around that, and we're waiting on the decisions that will make or break this deal. And the STB said, no. Hey folks, Dividend Gardener here, welcome to Dividend Gardening. Before we get moving, if you're interested in the century-long rivalry between CN and CP, and that is not hyperbole, it's really been more than 100 years, along with how they bid against one another for KCS, you can watch this video to catch up and then head back over to this one to get up to speed. Quick disclosure, at the time of posting this video, I am a CN Rail shareholder, but I don't really have an opinion on the deal either way. I'm just trying to share the facts and what I've seen reported in the news. The U.S. Surface Transportation Board, which regulates railways in the United States and thus has final say on whether KCS can merge with anyone, just denied CN's voting trust structure that they proposed. What does this mean? What's happened since? And what are the possibilities for this deal or another deal going forward? The STB released its decision in a 33-page document on August 31st. There's way too much to go through here, so I'm just going to talk about some of the key points that led to the STB's decision to deny the voting trust. One topic that came up for debate was whether the voting trust was in the public interest, and the STB seems to be of the opinion that CN and KCS didn't make a strong enough argument for that they focused too much on the overall merger and not enough on the voting trust itself. Basically, they're saying here that you do still have to demonstrate how this voting trust benefits the overall public and not just the shareholders. If you want to merge, you can still do it. You don't have to have a voting trust, but the same regulatory rules and risks do apply. Remember with the idea of a voting trust, that once the trust got STB and KCS shareholder approval, KCS itself would be placed in trust until the deal meets its remaining regulatory requirements and the STB approves the overall merger. So CN would technically own KCS, but wouldn't be allowed to manage it or make any drastic changes just yet. Meanwhile, the KCS shareholders would get paid. They would get cash and a new stake in CN Rail, and this is regardless of whether or not the merger got approved. If the merger did get approved, everything would have gone according to plan. If the merger didn't get approved, then CN would have to sell off KCS, and there's no guarantee that they'll get an asking price the same as or higher than its purchase price. The STB's worry here is that if they approve this voting trust for CN and KCS, and they go through this deal with a fine-tooth comb, they're going to say you have to sell KCS, and that would be a massive disruption to the overall railway system in North America. Next, comparing the CN proposal to the CP proposal, the STB says the two transactions are substantially different. The proposed CP-KCS transaction is an end-to-end merger, whereas here, the CN system overlaps with KCS, and then because of that, the regulatory standards need to be much higher. Later on, the STB elaborates, and you'll recall in my last video we talked about how there was a 70-mile overlap between CN and KCS's current routes, and that CN was willing to divest that portion. The STB argues here that there might not be that much of a literal overlap, but there is a lot more competitive overlap between the two lines going north to south and vice versa, and that they need more time to review what the implications might be before allowing any ownership changes. And that CN owning KCS, even if it was in trust, would potentially lead to even more consolidation a lot sooner, maybe even before that deal closes. A CN-KCS merger would mean that Canadian Pacific would become the smallest Class 1 railway by far, according to the STB, and that they might need to look for other potential strategic alliances just to keep up. To wrap up, the STB is saying that they're not comfortable with the risks that they foresee if the voting trust were allowed, and that a CN-KCS merger isn't necessarily off the table, but that the STB has to do a full review before allowing any ownership changes, trust or no trust. The decision to deny the voting trust was unanimous. There were no dissenting votes on the STB board. Before we talk about the reactions to this decision, if you'd like to help this channel reach more dividend investors, and if you're appreciating these updates on this story, it would really mean a lot if you could plant a like in 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for keeping those likes planted on schedule, and now let's talk about the reactions to the STB's decision. First, the markets. They seem to think that this is a good call for both Canadian railways. Shares in CN and CP went up about 5%. KCS shares dropped about 4.5% and rebounded about 3.5% the next day. Next, CN. They issued a brief statement saying that they were disappointed in the ruling and were evaluating their options. KCS said pretty much the same thing, and they also canceled their special shareholders meeting that was set to take place on September 3rd. CP issued a press release saying that the STB decision was the right one, and that their August 10th offer still stands, although technically they did resubmit it as a new bid. In exchange for each share of KCS, CP Rail is offering 2.884 shares of Canadian Pacific Railway and $90 in cash, working out to about $300 a share. Although KCS scheduled a new shareholders meeting on September 24th, CP Rail is wasting no time here. They want an answer by September 12th, and the offer is non-negotiable. Keith Creel, who is the CEO of CP, even said in a quote, "On September 13th, my appetite and willingness to offer this kind of compelling value at US $300 a share is not going to be the same that it is on September 12th. That's an incredible quote. How has this not been made into a Netflix series at this point? So what's next for each railway? For Canadian Pacific, it's just a matter of waiting and seeing what KCS decides. The odds of their merger going through definitely look to be in their favor right now, and that seems to be the general consensus among analysts. For KCS, it's clear that they've heard what Keith Creel had to say, and they're moving quickly. Their board has determined that CP's offer could be considered a company superior proposal, and it looks like they're going to consider it within the terms of the agreement that they currently have with CN. Time is running out though. And for CN, it's already paid KCS $700 million to cover the fee that KCS had to pay Canadian Pacific to put that initial deal to a halt. Now, CN might have to pay another $1 billion if they can't make their deal work. As it stands, CN has 3 options. 1, they could appeal the STB's decision. 2, they could raise their bid to try to push this deal through without a voting trust. Or 3, they can walk away. Analysts are of the mindset that option number 3 is the most practical. Analysts with ABH Consulting and Raymond James both cited the really tough language used in the STB's ruling. It seems at this point that the downsides of continuing forward outweigh the upsides. This just in, it is Sunday, September 12th, and today the KCS board has deemed the CP offer a company superior proposal, meaning they'll be cancelling the CN deal and moving forward with Canadian Pacific Railway. CN has 5 business days to counter the new offer, so we'll find out by the end of the week whether or not this battle of the bids has reached its final stop. This isn't the end of the story, but that's where this story is at right now. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, I'm not a financial advisor, and this video is for information and entertainment purposes only. The information presented might be outdated or inaccurate, so always do your own due diligence or seek the advice of a licensed financial professional. Thank you so much for watching, happy dividend gardening, and we'll see you in the next video.